Hello, welcome to Screen Talk with yours truly, Nomfanelo. It seems like for the past couple of months, there seems to be this trend. I don't know if that's the right word, but essentially, been seeing some notable people in the entertainment space getting into AI despite the risk and all like the negative aspects of AI. Like for example, Darren Aronofsky, who's a filmmaker, he did recently caught stealing, which was one of my favorite movies that came out in 2025. I saw that he launched a studio that's essentially dedicated to AI and teased like an AI project, which that gained controversy. And then Ben Affleck, where recently, I think it was last month, it was reported that apparently Netflix bought his AI company that he started 2 years ago, which is insane because, like many people that first saw this news, I didn't even know he had an AI company to begin with. And it's also wild that that came out. Not long when he appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast with Matt Damon, where he was talking about AI, and many people praised his comments from Joe Rogan at the time. But with that news coming out with him owning an AI company, well, that clearly has changed. Now, the latest person to be using AI is Steven Soderbergh. Now, Steven Soderbergh is, I would say, a notable filmmaker. He has done a lot of movies. It seems like almost every year there's always a new Steven Soderbergh movie. Black Bag, which came out last year, that was one of my favorite movies that came out. He has his new movie coming out later this month called The Christophers, which delves into the art space. So essentially, while promoting this movie, he did an interview on Filmmaker magazine, and essentially there were some comments in regards to AI that came up that has gotten a lot of people talking. So here it is. Here says Steven Soderbergh on making the Christophers with Michaela Cole and Ian McKellen. So I'll leave a link to this article in the description for you to look at. So I'm not going to go through everything. I just want to focus on the parts that have the AI comments in question, essentially. So because he was talking about technology and all that stuff. And then the interviewer asked this question. You can think about it in relation to an individual painter or filmmaker, or how, in terms of the formal history of the mediums, they hit a wall around 1970. And perhaps paradoxically, they are being revitalized by facing down the horror of AI. But maybe that's too depressing to talk about. And then Soderbergh responds, it's worth noting about what the technology might be good at. I've been working with AI lately on the John Lennon and Yoko Ono documentary that we're almost done with. AI has been helpful in creating thematically surreal images that occupy a dream space rather than a literal space. And that's been really fun because you need a PhD in literature to tell it what to do. But like every other piece of technology, it desperately requires very close human supervision. Now, when I first saw like on Twitter where they mentioned that he's using AI for this documentary, I was kind of like in shock. I'm like, what? Because you figured like with a documentary doesn't require AI or a lot of visuals, and maybe it depends on the type of documentary that he's trying to put out. But yeah, I just feel like this is unnecessary. So, as a side note, I found here that in regards to the Beatles, apparently it's not the first time it has been dealt with AI. So, if you recall, apparently when Peter Jackson was working on, I think it was like a documentary or docu series on the Beatles. I can't remember. Apparently, AI was used to restore the Beatles' last song called "Now and Then." So Google did an AI overview where they say the Beatles use AI, specifically audio source separation technology, developed by Peter Jackson's team, to isolate John Lennon's vocals from from a low quality 1970s demo tape for their 2023 last song, Now and Then. This technology allowed Lennon's voice to be separated from piano and background noise, enabling a clean, modern recording mix. So it highlights the key aspects of the AI usage, where it was used to clean up the demo, allowing Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr to complete the track with contributions from George Harrison. Gilles Martin, the project's audio producer, used machine learning to separate musical elements, vocals, and instruments rather than creating new ones. And apparently, this technology was used for the 2022 Revolver remix and the Get Back documentary to clarify audio. But Paul McCartney emphasized that AI was used to isolate existing audio, not to generate fake or synthetic vocals. So I just wanted to mention this as a side note, since Steven Soderbergh mentioned this upcoming documentary that he's working on in regards to John John Lennon and Yoko Ono. So back to the video. So interviewer says, "What which raises the larger problem of the war machine, something that John and Yoko tried to make people aware of." And then Soderbergh responds, "When we talked to Sean Lennon about the film, he said he was worried that young people have no idea what John stood for, and he's hopeful that our film will let them know what he did outside of making music. It was a wonderful, serendipitous thing that the 3 hour audio recording that John and Yoko did for RKO Radio, just a few hours before he was killed, showed up as a possibility for a film. Clips from it were heard after he died, but not the entire thing. I'm excited for people just to hear it because of how open they both are about art and love and politics and how relevant everything they say remains. The hardest part for me was editing it down to something that had a shape because I didn't want to lose any of it. 90% of the visuals are archival stills, and 10 minutes spread out over the 90-minute film are these little pockets of images we created whenever they start talking philosophically. When there's no literal component to what they're saying, then I create these images that are kind of a surreal version of what their words try to transmit. Now, I did see on Twitter, I guess the way this was phrased is that they say 10 minutes of this documentary is going to use AI. Now, that seems to be possible here, but does not explicitly say that he's using AI for those minutes. But if that's the case, I find that's unnecessary. And I think there are other ways that he could achieve this vision without resorting to AI. But yeah, and then he mentions another project here, and the AI comments get worse. So he's trying to get a movie made about the Spanish American War. And then, so the interviewer asks, "With ships and everything for which you would use?" So Soderbergh says, quote, "A lot of AI. It's my version of one of those. It's a really good story and nobody's really done it. Every day that goes by it becomes more timely. I've just got to get it cast. I've got Wagner Moura." Now, if you're not aware, Wagner Moura recently got nominated an Oscar for his performance in The Secret Agent. Um, if I remember correctly, I think Wagner Moura has talking about AI in the past. I may have to. I'll find like a clip of it later. I'll share in the description if I do find it. So I managed to find this article on Deadline, where during an interview, Wagnamore mentions that he's scared of AI, but is not afraid of the truth being told. So he talked about this while promoting The Secret Agent during award season. So the article came out back in October 2025. So it says here that he's scared of AI and how to deal with it. Especially, he warns, the idea that the truth as we know it, it's kind of over. That scares the shit out of me. And then worries that when you see someone speaking in a video or a movie and you hear their voice and see their face and it's not the person, and this is scary. Then he asks, who can we trust? I mean that's a valid question, really. And then apparently he's concerned too about the erroneous information that's put out on the darker parts of social media, which folk lap up as truth. That's scary too, he sighs, exasperated. It's as if we're living in different worlds. That's true. That is true. So yeah, just was Soderbergh planning to use AI for this movie? It's just not great, and hopefully reconsiders. But honestly, I don't know really. Who knows really? Assuming if this does get made at the end of the day, but yeah, this is not good for Soderbergh. So hopefully he reconsiders the whole AI usage. So back to the video. So he says, I need a few more people. I have two studios circling, but it's all about how much I can do it for. But if I can get the right cast together, that will eventize it. And people will feel they have to see it now rather than waiting 2 months until it streams. It's weird time to be making movies. I mean, it certainly is a weird time, but I mean, is there ever really a perfect time to make movies? One might wonder. But he doesn't have to like rush it with AI if this is the case. But I imagine if I'm just basing it this off of the comments that he's trying to go for a more maybe like epic feel with this subject matter. And if that is the direction that he's going with, he does not have to resort to AI to achieve this, because we have seen some epic movies or like period pieces or historical, whichever the case may be, that doesn't use AI to tell stories in this similar vein. I mean, Oppenheimer's example, Christopher Nolan, where Nolan has been very vocal about using more practical effects, not just with the Oppenheimer movie, but with the movies he's done before. And I imagine too with the upcoming movie he has, The Odyssey, that's coming out in the summer. But yeah, like there's ways to do this without resorting to AI, because I'm just wondering if he's doing this because he's forced into it, or if it's something that he wants to do, either to be more cost efficient or feels like AI is just more creative than the other tools that's out there. I don't know. But I just find like this is insane. I really hope does not use AI to do not just this movie, but also to the John Lennon and Yoko Ono documentary that I mentioned earlier. So I wondered though. I tried to research like has Soderbergh talked about AI comments before, and he has. So found article here. Let me go back here. This is from Variety. This was back in 2023. He was promoting his series at the time, Full Circle. Now, this is from Variety. So it says here Steven Soderbergh on his new miniseries, Full Circle, not sweating AI and why cell phones are the worst thing that's ever happened to movies. Now, I believe the article came out just before the SAG after strike, but I think the writer's strike was still happening at this time, if I remember the dates correctly. So, interviewer asked, "There's been a lot of concern about AI and whether it'll replace artists and writers. Does that worry you?" So he says, quote, "I may not be the Neville Chamberlain of the subject, but I am not afraid of AI in this specific context." So I'm not familiar who Neville Chamberlain is, but I imagine he means he's not like an expert on this. Is my guess. So anyway, so he goes on to say it has no life experience. It's never been hungover. It's never made a meal for anybody it loved. It's never been scared walking home late at night. It's never felt insecure because somebody that it went to high school with 20 years ago has become incredibly successful. I'm not afraid of it. It's just another tool. If it helps you finish a first draft of a script, great, but can it finish that thing and make it great on its own? Absolutely not. As of today, it's not keeping me up at night. So that's what he said about AI at the time. But then I found another article. This was came out last year while he was promoting his movie Presence. This is from the Daily Beast, Obsessed, where apparently he defends AI, where he says Steven Soderbergh defends AI in film. Quote, "I'm not threatened." So let's just unpack what he said here. Um, so interviewer says, "As you said, David Lynch was the definition of inevitable, but where is the line between inspiration and imitation?" And then Soderbergh says, "The issue of influence for young filmmakers especially is a really interesting one. All the stuff that's going on about people suing AI companies for using their work, I'm just here to admit that what that thing is doing to generate a version of something is what I do." And then person asks, "You don't see AI as a form of plagiarism?" And then Soderbergh says, I am the process of synthesizing everything I've ever witnessed or experienced or watched or made in order to decide how I want to do a specific thing at a specific moment on a specific day on set. If carnal knowledge doesn't exist, sex, lies, and videotape doesn't exist, what do I owe Jules Pfeiffer and Mike Nichols? They would tell you I don't owe them anything, that they're standing on somebody else's shoulders. David Lynch would go, "Well, if I've never seen a Brunel film, I probably wouldn't be exactly the filmmaker I am. I know the differences in theory. These are for profit companies." I'm like, "Well, I'm a for profit company. It's called Populist Pictures Inc., and I'm the principal. I don't know what the solution is here. I'm just saying that the idea of somebody creating an AI that a young filmmaker uses to give ideas that's been fed in the style of Steven Soderbergh, I don't care." And then person asks, "Does AI have potential for you?" And then he says, "Absolutely, it's a tool. Its limitations are obvious and insurmountable. But as it continues to develop, its use in getting to iterations of things faster is absolutely valuable to me, but it can't finish anything, so I'm not threatened by it. Writers should be threatened by it. Actors, I understand their concerns, and these are very solvable problems in terms of language and usage. There's a lot of language that was already in SAG contracts about image and likeness. That language is getting tighter and tighter, which is good. But at a certain point, I'm going on the fact that audiences ultimately will always want to see something that at least feels like a person made it. And then interviewer says, "Hopefully." And then Soderbergh says, "I think so. You have to remember this doesn't exist in a vacuum. If you go off and make a movie or a TV show that is, quote, all AI, the audience knows that. That's framing the whole experience for them. And I think that puts them in this space of disinclination. It does for me. I'm talking about something that's trying to convince me that it's real, not something that's designed to never be that. I'm talking about you're trying to convince me that this family drama you've done entirely in AI is real. I'm here to tell you if you were able to do it, given the amount of effort involved, I think I would look at it and go, why don't you just go shoot? Like in a day, why is this better?" That's the question you need to ultimately ask about all these things. And it includes a director making very bold decision in terms of approach of a movie. If I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, you're going this way, but I'm thinking, why is this better? Is this better? Presence is an interesting example of that, in the sense that every other way to do this is worse. So yeah, that's his comments on AI. So maybe like with the recent comments he made with AI in regards to the the documentary and the Spanish American war film, maybe you could argue that with what he has said in the past, like I've highlighted, doesn't come as a surprise, because he seems to view AI simply as a tool, despite like the risk and the threats that it has posed, like for a lot of creatives out there in various ways. But yeah, maybe like ultimately this is not a surprise with him saying this stuff, but it's certainly disappointing for sure. And I want to end off. So I saw here he did interview with the Ankler, and there was a quote that they highlighted here from the interview, where apparently this quote, where he talks about art, commerce, and legacy, he says here, it's the artist's job to adapt. When the landscape shifts, you just have to figure it out. Now, when I listen to the conversation, that comes up after he talks about his retirement. Now, if you recall, I think it was like in the mid or late 2000s, he decided to retire from the industry to focus on painting, something like that, because apparently he was just fed up on how the industry was at that point. But then eventually he came back to filmmaking and hasn't stopped since. Now, like with this quote here, makes me wonder though, like with what he has said about AI, like is he doing this to adapt because we're seeing AI becoming more normalized, essentially, despite like the outrage and what AI has done in terms of eliminating jobs, limiting creativity, and all that stuff. So, but I will say this, just because, let's say, there's always something new out there, does not mean you have to accept it. So, if you remember, like years ago, well, filmmakers used film, for example, to make movies, and then digital came along, essentially. And as digital came to the scene, there were filmmakers out there that were willing to accept this and decided to use digital over film. While there's other filmmakers out there that are like, oh, F digital, I'm gonna stick with film, as an example. So just because AI is becoming more prominent does not mean you have to use it, essentially, for the projects. Because it's really up to the person to decide whether to use AI. But if you do use it, be prepared for like the backlash, obviously, because there's a lot of factors on why people are outraged with AI, not just like from a creative standpoint, but also too from like business perspective, and how that has changed industries, and all that stuff. But yeah, like in ways it's quite disappointing with what Soderbergh had to say in regards to AI comments, not just of recently, but also too, you could argue, from the past. But yeah, there is that for you. So that pretty much concludes, my thoughts and comments on Steven Soderbergh's comments on AI. Let me know what do you think about all this in the comments section. If you want to support me, you can visit buymeacoffee.com/Malloy, where you could donate and also to look at exclusive posts there. Most of the posts that I have on the platform are for follows only, so you can follow me there on Buy Me a Coffee, and you could create an account there for free. Also, too, on YouTube, my YouTube channel, I do have a community tab there. So feel free to leave comments there as long as it's under community guidelines, of course. And if you want to follow me on social media, my links are in the description. So I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.